The letter C. Why does it exist when we can just use K and S? Why does it make two sounds? Why? Our story begins with ancient Greece. Well, actually, the Greeks got their alphabet from the Phoenicians, and the Phoenicians got their alphabet from the North Semitic, which came from the Sinaitic inscriptions, which came from hieroglyphics. But we have to start somewhere, and Greece is where the story of the C begins. But if you look at the classical Greek alphabet, you'll notice something. There is no C. There's a familiar looking alpha and beta, but where you would expect to find the C, there instead is gamma, which makes a G sound. If you look at the Cyrillic alphabet, it's much the same. So why does Latin have a C where you would expect a gamma? Because Latin, Greek, and Cyrillic aren't the only alphabets that have existed in Europe. They may be the only major ones now, but throughout history, there have been many alphabets in Europe, such as Futhark, Old Hungarian, Glagolitic, and, importantly for us, Etruscan. The Etruscan alphabet was based off of ancient Greek, but the Etruscan language had different sounds than ancient Greek. The Etruscan language didn't have the voiced velar plosive G, but they did have the unvoiced velar plosive K. So when they made their alphabet, they didn't care whether the Greek letter was voiced or unvoiced, they just needed a velar plosive. And they went with the voiced gamma rather than the unvoiced kappa. When the Romans got around to making their own alphabet, they took letters from both Greek and Etruscan, explaining why we have both C and K. But why does C make a S sound? Because Latin underwent some sound changes. At some point in the history of Latin, a K immediately followed by a front vowel, such as E or E, became K, then Ch, then Ch, then S, and finally S. At least in French, but we'll get back to that later. Because of this, the soft C is present in English words of French and Latin origin, such as acid, scent, cinema, circle, city, civil, and so on. But then, why are some Germanic words, like ice and mice, spelled with a soft C? Because in English, the letter S has some weird pronunciation rules. Typically, when a word ends with a vowel followed by an S, the S makes a Z sound, such as wise, raise, eyes, these. So, in order to make the pronunciation less confusing, when a word ends in a vowel followed by a S sound, it is sometimes written as a C followed by a silent E. But what about the word cello? Why isn't it spelled with a CH? Well, remember when I said that the Latin K changed into a SIR in French? Well, that didn't happen in every Romance language. Although the soft C in Catalan, French, Portuguese, and most dialects of Spanish is pronounced the same as in English, it has many different pronunciations across the former Roman Empire. In parts of Spain, soft C is pronounced th. In Romanian and most of the Italian languages, the soft C is pronounced ch. Okay, so that's how C is pronounced in English and the Romance languages, but what about languages that had little to do with Latin or French? How do they use the letter C? Well, in German, the letter C on its own, which mainly occurs in foreign loanwords, had both a hard and soft variant, hard K and soft C. However, C is much more often used in the CH digraph, which itself has multiple pronunciations. When it comes after an A, O, or U, it makes a H sound.
Hoch.
Otherwise, it's pronounced H.
Nichts.
C is also used in the German trigraph SCH, which makes a sh sound.
Mensch.
The rest of the Germanic languages, along with Finnish, pronounce hard and soft C the same way as in English. In the Slavic languages that use the Latin alphabet, along with Albanian, Hungarian, Estonian, Latvian, and Lithuanian, C represents the ch sound. In most of those languages, a C with a diacritic represents the ch sound. In Vietnamese and the Celtic languages, C always makes a k sound. Malay, Fon, Indonesian, Hausa, and Fula pronounce C as ch. In Turkish, Azeri, and Northern Kurdish, C makes a j sound, while a C with a diacritic makes a ch sound. In Yabem and other languages of Papua New Guinea, C represents the sound. In Zulu, Tswana, and Xhosa, C represents the dental click. In Fijian, it represents a V sound. Quechua, Igbo, Guarani, and Swahili only use C in the digraph CH, which makes the ch sound. And then there are a bunch of other languages that don't use the letter C at all.